It's a channel that comes to you every week with policy analysis, conversations, and occasional business stories. Behind the news. And when we talk about news behind the news, it is because we take a few headlines from the language and analyze its implications. This is a brand new week. It's a Monday morning. And I hope you enjoy this week. Today, anchoring my co-anchor is Katya. Welcome, Katya. Glad to have you here. And both of us are going to analyze three different titles. Look at the titles of this week. The first one is about how the US is going down in more ways than the second one is a very interesting story on how liquidity offtake has actually not picked up even though the RBI part of the country. Is one step on how Russia has also joined China to the Gwadar. Let's take the first story first. Look at the chart on the screen. The chart shows dramatically opposite lines. One going down, one going up. The one which is going down is 18 to 24-year-olds and their ability to get access to education. 60-year-old pluses. And these are the people who are actually going to be a bigger burden on the USA, because then you will be able to find out whether the US can meet the pension and old age payments to them. I mean, both these lines are in opposite directions. It just means one thing, that the US is going to lose creativity, productivity, because the youngsters are not there, and the burden of old people is going to keep on increasing. At a time when the US needs immigration and migrants coming into cheap labor and with talent, the US is hitting itself on the foot. But there's more trouble. Oil exports have not taken up as well as planned. And the US was betting big on oil exports. The only country that's agreed to increase its oil purchase of USA is India. And it's reduced its purchases from the Middle East, and has opted for USA instead. But that is not all. Look at the next title. Corn exports have plunged. The US was the largest producer of corn, and Brazil is the second largest, but Brazil may become larger now. The US has recorded production. But just when its produce went to various countries, the ports turned away the corn because they did not want to take up US packages. In many places where the corn reached the ports, they wrote unknown source and sent the corn back. That returned corn has not hit US shores yet. The insurance agency, which looks after exports, has protected the farmers for now. But when that comes in, the farmers will realize that there are no takers for its corn. The same thing with soybean. And who are the beneficiaries? Brazil, which is exporting its corn, and other countries are willing to take it up. And Canada, which is selling to Mexico. And Mexico, which had been purchasing for the US, now has decided to purchase in Canada. Effectively, if the world is turning against the US little by little without making too much of noise, just rejecting exports. And that is why you can understand why Trump is twisting India's arms to make sure it takes US agriculture and that US continues to take its oil. India continues to take US oil. India is, let us say, the basket in which the US wants to dump everything. But the consequences for Indians is frightening, because when agriculture is allowed into India, expect big trouble. And let's go to the next story, which is equally interesting. It's about the RBI and credit offtake. Katya, could we have you?
So, RBI has given many gifts to the market. For one, a lot of these gift giving started in December 2024, CRR cut. Then there was a 100 basis point repo rate cut, which has come into the market. But what it has done, no, we all know, it's enters the markets. What it's not done, it has not improved the slowing credit growth in the system. For example, if you see my credit growth, it is 9.5%. It's almost, I mean, it's much lower than what it was. 16.2%. In fact, it has slipped to the. I mean, it has now slipped to the single digit zone. Credit growth, even a month back in April, credit growth was better at 11.2%. Loan to industry is also slipped very, very lower, 4.9% versus 6.7%. It's actually a very good, very sharp, fall. So what do this is in spite of the fact that RBI is pumping money into the banking system. So a lot of experts say that going ahead also, this growth will slow down further, and in fact a lot of people peg it at 7%, which is much lower than what it was a few years back. A lot of loan growth, double digit loan growth we've seen healthy growth in the last few years, was because of personal loans. And if you remember right, RBI has cracked down on personal loans where end use was not specified, which means so that put a little bit of pressure on personal loans, and it's never picked up from there. So that is one of the issues that has happened. A lot of people also feel that there is some connection between consumption in the system and the slowing loan growth in the system. And a lot of people say a lot of this macroeconomic push that a lot of liquidity pumping that is done into the system has also not resulted in the much needed transmission as well. So transmission is not happening. This is what bond market completely says. That is why bond market is going really well. Anyway, sir, what do you think is the connection? Do you think there is a sincere cleanse? Because a lot of this slowdown has come from personal growth side, which means do you see? I mean, consumption has been affected. It's been seen in FMCG numbers. It is seen everywhere. Consumer durables as well. So, what do you think is the real reason? And why
Personally, we are
isn't the liquidity not helping? Sorry, BS, go ahead.
no, no. You're right, Katya. You are absolutely right. Liquidity is not helping because many industries, many producers do not want to increase production because they fear an economic slump. So there's a fear factor one, and
Right.
two, consumer demand has gone down. Where's the purchasing power? The government's
Mm,
taking away everything that the consumer earns as taxes.
mm,
So while the government's income is increasing, consumers' income is not increasing, partly because growth in income hasn't taken place, and also because you have a situation where uh, uh, even people are losing jobs.
mm.
So when people lose jobs, family income declines. You're right. Both are the factors that are responsible, and the government is trying to look at symptoms rather than the basic causes.
Right.
Thanks, Katya. And then we have the third story, which could be very interesting geopolitically, but very worrisome for India. Remember Gwadar port in Pakistan? China wooed Pakistan because it wanted to have a road connecting China and Gwadar port. Why? Because America had ring fenced China on the eastern side, which means it could block its oil and energy and other imports anytime. And that is why for China, that China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC, was a lifeline to China. It spent $37 billion building this port. But wait, even while the CPEC is already humming with activity, India's plans of developing the Chabahar port haven't taken off, have not yet taken off. But there's a third problem now for India. And the problem is that Russia, where sanctions are jeopardizing its exports through its western side, has now worked out a deal with China where it will connect to the CPEC and even to the Gwadar port, and Russia will thus have access to the Arabian Sea and will take our Middle East exports and imports completely without looking at America. Suddenly, things are looking up for Russia because it has a connectivity to China. Now it has a connectivity to Pakistan. And Gwadar port is also looking at small boat services between all the Middle Eastern states and the Eastern African states and its own port. Which means that when the Arabian Sea is concerned, where the Arabian Sea is concerned, you'll have Pakistan, Chinese, and Russian ships going to Gwadar port and not to Chabahar port because that is yet to become active. India's fear of America is hobnobbing it completely and it can't do anything. And that was my third story for the day. And now let me go to the question. But before the questions, the simple, usual reminder. Please click the subscribe button if you have not subscribed already. And do click the like button if you like the program because it helps us immensely. And lastly, please tell your friends about us. It is very important for us to grow. And now let me take on questions that are there. And the first question is about Chabahar port. What is India's plan to counter Russia's moves? India's plans are very simple. India has to improve its relations with the neighboring countries. Then its ports become more active, then its ports become more vibrant. And if India does not move quickly, even maritime trade will go to Pakistan and not to India. India needs to move quickly. Otherwise, India is in trouble. And that takes me to the second question. Is Trump's policy the reason for the slump in US agri exports? Of course. Trump has been muscling around with countries. Mexico is furious. So Mexico prefers to import from Canada. Canada is furious, but Canada is delighted because now its agri exports can go to Mexico. Brazil. America tried to muscle around Brazil also. So what did Brazil do? It happily took its exports and went to China and went to other countries. And since Brazil has a friendlier face, Canada has a friendlier face than America has, its exports are doing well, while America's agri exports are not doing well. And the only country where it can dump its agri products is India. And India does not have the strength, apparently, to counter the US. It makes big sounds. But look at the way it reduced its oil imports from the Middle East and took up America's oil. And look at some excuse or the other for India to justify certain kinds of agri exports. Every agri export that America makes to India, and India is growing that crop, will hurt India's farmers, will hurt India's agriculture from a long-term point of view. India is too weak or too unwilling to counter America. That is worrisome. And there's a last question which I would like to take up. What are the ways in which India can improve credit offtake and make the economy boom? Katya, would you have any ideas on this?
Again, sir, a lot of credit growth because it was fueled by personal loans. It has to be organic. The economic situation has to improve. Spending has to improve, for which wages have to improve, etc. But what banks can do is they can transmit these rate cuts advantages faster. That is why they are losing a lot of loans to the bond market. Now everybody is either going. SBI releases gigantic QIP. If Adani's do the really big bond, issue, so they are preferring bonds because it's faster transmission. The bond market reacts faster. So that they can do to bring a little bit of corporate loans back, because corporate loans are much better in terms of margins than personal loans.
Very true. Katya, you hit the nail on the head. If India does not change its economic policies and make sure that more wage growth takes place, growth takes place,
Right.
I can't see the market booming. And for
Right.
investments to come in, you have to be friendlier to investors, to businesses. You're right.
Right.
We have one more question. Let me see whether we have the time. No, we don't have the time. I think we'll skip that question, but can I take this question up later when we discuss the same topic? Because Gwadar is now going to become a big topic in the coming year. In any case, to the beginning of the week, have a lovely week ahead. And yes, have a wonderful day. Take care. Good luck.